our education system is based on this committee of 10. It has not deviated very much, I think, except for Latin. It is not as required. But math and science has even escalated. Math and science is driven by the National Defense Education Act that was passed in 1958, and that was in direct response to Sputnik that happened in 1957. So you can thank them and the Committee of Education and Labor for the kind of math that's required in the classroom right now. It hasn't deviated. Now, keep in mind, we're not teaching budgeting skills, but we're still requiring that students have the kind of math and science that date back to Sputnik. English and history has been used as linguistic imperialism since our inception. If you look at any old history or English book, it's just riddled with biases, and I mean, you can imagine. So we can't really trust the English and history curriculum, and that's a huge fight right now in education, right? Politically. Psychologically, I kind of had an aha moment, and for those of you who are familiar with the Milgram shock experiment, I'm not going to explain it, but there's a video that I'll include in this webpage. And it was in response to see how obedient people can, how something like the Holocaust could have happened. It was a test in obediency. And Milgram and his colleagues got together and they had this shock where this volunteer would come in and supposedly shock somebody on the other side of the screen thinking it was a memory test. And they wanted to see how far they could push somebody who didn't know that they were being shocked. And the only thing that they had to have was a teacher in a lab coat so that they looked official. They looked like an authoritarian. And they had the student sitting in the chair, or sorry, they made him the teacher, gave him an authority role. And the guy in the lab coat would say just a few words. He'd say, "Continue, teacher." Even if the subject started to get upset, they would say, "Continue, teacher." And they would time and time again. And so even though it was used as an experiment to see the studies of obedience in retrospect to Germany, I just had this aha moment when I'm teaching AP psychology and there's a question about Milgram on the multiple choice test, and I feel like the College Board is in my head saying, "Continue, teacher," And I just had this moment of like, oh my gosh, like this is Milgram's shock experiment. Like we are hurting kids because they're not really understanding this, right? It's more about, can I get the right answer on a multiple choice test? And yet the irony is not lost on me. If you do watch the video attached, if you go about 3 minutes and 20 seconds in, it's my moment. And there's this guy with an old 1960s crew cut, and he's got these horned rim glasses on, and it's black and white, a little grainy, and he shakes his head at that point, and he says something like, "Okay, but I'm not going to be held responsible for this." And I just thought, who is? I mean, he still had to live with that. He was visibly uncomfortable with his decisions to shock, and yet he continued to do it. So anyway, I feel like maybe we're part of this big experiment. And what you're not getting is a life. You're not getting, like I said, basic budgeting, and yet you're being blamed for not knowing it, right? I think that's messed up. And I don't feel like you're getting the truth. I feel like you ask good questions. Why am I taking this class? And I just feel like in your heart that some of these answers are bogus. And what we can do about that, we can get to later, but I just think right now we need to expose some of these truths. Part 4 of the GETS is to get skills. Because one thing that we don't have in education are the teaching of skills. And of course, as the more business management systems begin to erode on education, shop classes begin to decline, auto classes. So the more independence that you could have for yourself and be proud of as a student becomes under the power of business management systems. And really, why would they want you to have skills when you can be dependent on them, right? While you're bubbling in these circles, you're not learning skills that could help you with good survival skills. So skills, I just said A through E. A, really any skills that business management systems would not want you to have. Basic budgeting rather than bubbling. Critical thinking or confusopoly. What was it? It's like a Dilbert quote. Confusopoly, which is there's just constant chaos. Nobody gives you a straight answer. There's, even though we have the same algebra and math curriculum, the way we teach it keeps changing, like styles change, right? Because that's part of business management. D is, again, that dependency on business management systems instead of self-independency. And then E is self-esteem over self-loathing. I think it is in the best interest of business management systems to get you students to not like yourselves so that you literally buy into their products. So to genuinely like yourself would be your own revolution, which is challenging. And then the fifth one, I need to take my glasses off for this one because I can't see very well. So the fifth, I just said, can we just get real? You know, I see these education quotes, like education is our business. Well, they literally mean that. It is their business. And business management secures profits, lucrative gains off of human capital. Literally called human capital. It's an economic term. Philosophers take that in a little different way because what that means in the business world is kids are just being used for financial gain. By creating lifelong learners, they mean that too, cradle to grave. If you learn under their system, then you will be learners under their power. Because knowledge is power. And those in power control the knowledge in order to enable students to learn. Enable students to learn. Well, you've got the enable part right, which sounds more like gaslighting, which is on an abuse checklist, honestly. So every child obviously does not count or matter. So can we just call it for what it is? Why do we build up kids' hopes so early and say you can do anything and be anything? And then in every day in the front headline news is what you can't do and people who get knocked down. So what do I have next? Freedom. This is not freedom. So let's at least be honest with that. If you don't have time to cultivate your own life, then you don't have freedom. No time, no freedom. And you want goals. I think about people who are doing noble things, saying we need to fight for these causes, we need to change government, we need to change legislation. In my humble estimation, my focus is strictly on education because as I see it, it won't matter what causes you're marching for today, because within one generation of public education, that is going to be erased with the ungenuine knowledge and the time that is being consumed that we don't know about. We're sending kids off to war and they have no idea what's happening. I don't think kids have any, right? I mean, you're with me, right, students? Like, why are we talking about these places around the world when we don't know about them? I've had former students go to Iraq and they couldn't find Iraq on a map. And that's not an insult. I'm just saying they didn't even know what or why they were going because we don't teach it. And why don't we teach it in the classroom? Who runs the curriculum? Okay. So we have an outdated business model system currently in place because we have a complex, antiquated system of governance because we still have an antiquated system of education. Institutionalized. How's that? In conclusion, again, this is for none and all. I want to empower you because I feel like you're just being used. My analogy was imperialism. You know, it's the same checklist, like England going into India or Europe in Africa. It's how you go in and take over kids, because if you take over education, you really do. The hand that rocks the cradle rules the world, or something like that. So again, the significance is I'm going to continue fighting for education. I'm fighting for you. I love you, and you're the future. Ooh, it's getting warm in here. Okay. And I think about my dream, and you all who know me know I love my dream analysis. And so I think about the empty bucket is really significant because you probably find this too. Like, do you notice that people tell you about your lives instead of ask you? Like, people will tell me about my retirement. Here, I'll give you an example. Oh, so you're retired, Nathan? Yeah, what are you doing? Well, I usually say, well, I'm trying to start a revolution. Interesting. But then they'll say, what's it like to sleep in the morning? Do you notice how that's not quite asking me? Anyway, I know you guys get this. Like, what are you going to do with your lives when they project their lives onto you? So the bucket is empty because it reminds me of like the Tao, right? If your bucket's already full, if you already think you know about somebody's life, then there's no more room. Forget watching this video. What's the point? But those who are open to iSchool, those who are open to these conversations, it needs to be open, yeah? I think that the noise was to get my attention. You definitely got my attention, and I salute you. And I think the Black Diamonds, if I were to brainstorm this, for me, I used to love to ski before it became too expensive and crowded. But Black Diamonds were kind of my favorites. I liked moguls. I liked them because they were hard. I wasn't good, but I liked the challenge, and I like this challenge. So it could be that, or like I said, it was kind of like a net, like a safety net, if we build some trust. So you can start by trusting yourself. If you want to start with a revolution, or Viva la Revolution, start by getting some sleep. And I don't mean that in a condescending way. I mean, these last 2 years for me, I knew that if I was going to start a revolution, I had to start a revolution within myself. I had to change. And I remember one lesson, I don't remember your name, I'm sorry, but we had an argument. I said, okay, everybody stand up. Everybody stood up, and she was mad. She was like, we got to change the world. I said, everybody stand up. I probably stole this from somebody else. And I said, okay, I want you to draw a circle around your feet, right? You know, and I remember this one student because everybody else was like, oh, this is so dumb. But she just went, oh. Because I said, you can't really change the world, or you can, but don't think about the world out there. Start with right here. Or another group of students, we had so many arguments about this. Remember how if you point one finger at somebody else, you're pointing 3 right back at yourself. And of course, that turned into, oh, my dog, is it 3 fingers or 4? Thumbs up. The point, though, is before I start blaming somebody else, I need to put the responsibility back on me. And that's why I apologize for being part of the College Board, AP classes, testing. Just 1 minute. Well, yes, mister. Come on. Okay. Well, they can come in or not. Okay. So where was I? Oh, yes, at my conclusion. So circle around your feet. That's your world. And so you change yourself, you change your world. And that's what I've been doing. And so that's kind of the bad news to start this. Feel free to email me, hotplate7@yahoo.org. .com. And then, of course, my webpage is inewson.org. And I'm doing just fine. And let's see, I see it like this. Let's see, I'm graduating from high school, and let's just keep having these little chats. Ciao for now.